Hello everyone, my name is MD Hassan Shahriar from Florida International University. I'm presenting our work on Deceptive Data Acquisition Framework against Stealthy Attacks in Cyber Physical Systems. This is the outline of my presentation. I will briefly go through the introductory slides, then explain the proposed framework, which has two parts, deception mechanism and remapping mechanism. Then I will explain a fiber system case study, performance analysis, and at the end I will conclude the presentation. So the cyber physical system has two parts, cyber and physical layers, and power grids are perfect examples of cyber physical systems. In this work, we consider power grids as the test case as the cyber physical systems. The key elements of power grid SCADA are remote equipments, which is RTUs, IED generators, etc. Then energy management system, EMS, which is topology processor, state estimator, optimal power flow, AGC, etc. And then we have the communication channel that connects the remote equipments with the energy management systems. Among all of these, state estimation and the pattern detection algorithm plays a very vital role in the sensory data processing. It removes the noises. And also, the better detection algorithm is capable of removing a random data injection. So, the state estimator considered the good measurements data to estimate the states. However, there can be an attacker compromising the measurement data while complying with the system topology, and such stealthy false data injection attack cannot be detected by the state estimation and the BDT algorithm. Now, the integration of the complex and heterogeneous systems in the power grid CPS creates enormous space for the adversaries. In most of the CPS, the devices in the SCADA network have limited computational power to perform high-end encryption on the sensor data streams. Besides, some critical infrastructures such as power system have time constraint on the data acquisition process. For example, IEC 61850 standard enforces a maximum 4 millisecond delay within the messages of a substations. Thus, in some cases, despite having sufficient computational capabilities, high-end security may not be applied due to the time restrictions. Moreover, several studies showed once a sophisticated attacker gains sufficient knowledge about the targeted system's topology and the states, he can easily evade the existing defense mechanism by utilizing that resources in generation of the attack data. Moreover, the extensive removing of those compromised data may lead the system to an unobservable state. This slide shows research works to address such challenges. There are several works introducing uncertainty in the CPS control loop. Moreover, there are some works in some other works, authors examined to patch up the physical properties of the system to make the attacks invalid. And there are a few other works on the moving target defense with crafty network packets. However, most of these works comes with very high cost and may not be applicable for the robustness of the overall systems. In our work, we considered the overall randomization of the data acquisition process, and even though these the existing works mainly focus on only one thing at a time, either detection or mitigation or localization. However, our work can detect, mitigate, and localize the stealthy FD attacks in a single framework. So our contributions are we proposed a CQ data acquisition framework that makes the system resilient against stealthy attacks. And in the deception mechanism, we considered the ID randomization of the sensors during in the sensory nodes, in the network nodes, that misleads the stealthy attacks. And at the EMS, we propose seed-based remapping to find the original IDs of the sensor data, and that can also remove the malicious data, detect, mitigate, and localize the attacks. And we implemented these frameworks on IEEE bus systems and did an extensive evaluation on that. This is the system model that we considered with the increasing trend in the distributed generation, renewable energy, and electricity demand. Smart grid hierarchical network is becoming a preferable option day by day. The left figure shows a hierarchical communication model with three layers of substation switches. Such hierarchy forms a tree structure shown in the right figure, where each of the nodes act as each of the substation acts as a node here. So we define different levels of node. A level 1 substation only receives data from its own sensors, like shown in the blue color, whereas the level 2 substation receives data from both its sensors and the underneath level 1 substations, and so on. The channel between level 1 substation and the level 2 substations are defined as level 1 channel, and the channel between level 2 substation and level 3 substations are defined as level 2 channels. Sorry. During the data acquisition process, there remains multiple vulnerable points which an adversary can compromise. As the network communication channel spans the overall network here, the physical security is fragile at some points, and we consider them as the attack surface here. Thus, the attacker compromises, if the attacker compromises the L1 channel, we call it as an L1 attack. If the attacker compromises the L2 channel, we consider it as an L2 attack, etc. And here we consider the man in the middle FDA attacks as the threats, where the attacker injects false data to mislead the state estimation process. This is the proposed framework. Our framework is titled as DDAF. So DDAF has two key mechanisms, which is deception mechanism and the remapping mechanism. The deception mechanism is executed at nodes or the network switches, and the remapping mechanism is executed at the EMS or energy management systems. So the deception has two parts: RAND IDs and RAC IDs, pair generation, and the packet crafter. The deception mechanism generates random deceptive IDs using the seed values at the network switches, and craft the packets during the data acquisition process by replacing those IDs with by replacing the received IDs with the RAND IDs. And there are two types of sensors that we considered in this framework, which are randomized and fixed. The randomized sensors participate in the in the deception process, and their IDs are shuffled with the deceived IDs. But the fixed IDs does not. Fixed sensor doesn't participate in the randomization. And in the remapping mechanism, the key task is to generate the ID stack using the same RAND ID, RAC ID, RAND IDs pairs, so that the EMS can remaps to the remaps the deceived IDs with the original IDs and run the state estimation and analyze the residuals or the outliers. So in the next slide, we show how the ID stack is generated using the deceived IDs. So in the right figure shows a simple hierarchical network, and the bottom shows the considered ID stack, where the lightly colored boxes shows the IDs of the received sensors, or the received IDs, and the vividly colored block shows the random IDs for each of the received IDs. And by concatenating the layer 1 and layer 2, we can generate the ID stack at the EMS for the overall network. This slide shows how we detect and localize the attack. The first step is to analyze the residual. So we randomize the residuals for different levels using the RAC ID, RAND IDs pair, and run the state estimation on the residual data, and then calculate the deviation between the randomized residual and the estimated residual. And secondly, we also analyze the outlier, or the position of the outlier noisy sensors. We randomize the outliers for different levels and analyze their distribution with respect to the system topology. So here is a 5 bus system case study to illustrate the effectiveness of the framework. The 5 bus system has 5 buses, 7 lines, and 19 measurement here, and we have 5 level 1 switches, 2 level 2 switches, and then we have the EMS here. The lightly color boxes shows the IDs with the received IDs. So these are the original IDs of the sensors going through that substations, and the vividly highlighted IDs are the random IDs for each of the received IDs. And different colors indicates different substations here. And we see that at level 1, the random IDs are coming from the same substations as the colors are the same. But for level 2, different sensors have different IDs coming from different substations, and that means the randomization at level 2 or any higher level is more effective than the lower ones. Now let's see, let's analyze the impact of an FDI attack at level 2. Let's assume that the attacker's intent is to inject malicious data on these red color IDs. However, due to the randomization, the attack goes to the purple color IDs. That means the injection for ID 1 goes to 15s, the injection for ID 2 goes to 5, and all this injection goes to the other sensor. That means the injection, even though the attacker was able to inject false data, but it happened at the wrong place, and it does not follow the topology and loses the stealthiness. And at the end, we find no deviation on the state estimation, because all these compromised sensors becomes outlier, leaving the state estimation harmless. Now we have the residual after the state estimation, and our goal is to analyze whether there is any attack at any of the level. So we take the rec ID, rand IDs for level 1 and run the state estimation on the residual data, and we see that there is a high deviation on the residual, reshuffled residual and the estimated residual, and the suspected sensors are there are very less number of sensors, only 1 and 6, and they are not somehow presenting any strong evidence of an attack. On the other hand, for level 2, we see that the estimated residual and the reshuffled residuals perfectly follow the distribution, follow the topology. That means that residual is not just random, it's highly structured with respect to the topology. And if we see the suspected sensors or the list of outliers, they are also coming from a same specific part of the sensor. That means there is a very high probability that there is an attack, FDI attack at level 2 communication channel, and that actually happened that we saw in the previous slide. We go through the evaluation results. We have 3 metrics here: the percentage of stealthy attacks. If all the compromised sensors remains undetected, we consider that attack as a stealthy attack. And if any of the compromised measurement becomes outlier, we consider that the attack as an exposed attack. And then we have the compromised sensor elimination rate, the CSER, which is the ratio between the number of eliminated compromised sensors to the number of total compromised sensors. Now we see that as we increase the deception, that means we consider more sensors in the randomization, the PSA increases drastically after 25%, and even after 50% it becomes almost close to 0. And the PEA, on the other hand, increases drastically after 25%, and after 50% it goes to almost 100%. So most of the attacks become exposed to the EMS. And we see that compromised sensors, as we increase the deception, it almost increases linearly with the percentage of deception. That means as we consider more sensors in the randomization, more compromised measurement can be eliminated from the state estimation process. Sorry. And thus there is a state estimation deviation or estimation deviation rate. Here we see that as we increase the randomization, the estimation between the estimation deviation decreases after 50%, and we can achieve very low deviation for level 2 and level 3 attacks. But for level 1, the estimation deviation rate still remains a little bit higher than the safer zone. And here we have the percentage of SDN enabled nodes. That means how how many nodes should have the SDN or the deception capabilities. And we see that as we have more SDN enabled nodes, and we can actually mitigate the attack impact by almost 0% for level 2 and level 3. But for level 1, the the impact remains still a little bit higher than the level 2 and level 3. However, even though for level 1 the attack mitigation is not that much efficient, but the detection and the localization is quite efficient for all of these levels. Here in the left figure shows that with sufficient deception, we can detect the existence of the attack with an AUC score of 0.95 in average, and even with 25% deception, we can achieve a very decent AUC score for random attacks. And we see that for a level 1 we can achieve maximum 0.86 AUC. However, for level 2 and level 3 we can achieve almost 1 AUC for the higher levels. Now we focus on the attack localization, and we see that we implemented 250 attacks on each of the levels, and see that 81% L1 attacks are classified correctly, and 99% to 100% attacks for level 2 and level 3 are classified correctly for the higher levels. That means as higher the levels are, the localization accuracy is much better, becomes much better. The last figure here shows the precision of the sensor localization. So once the levels are localized, now our goal is to localize the attacker's intended sensors or the targeted sensors, and we see that for level 2 and level 3 we can achieve very high precision in localizing the targeted sensors. And lastly, we have the scalability analysis. We run our framework on IEEE 14, 57 and 300 bus systems, and we see that the performance, the PSA, CSER and the attack detection remains almost the same for smaller, medium and large power systems. That means our model is here. So to conclude, we proposed a deception defense based data acquisition framework, DDAF, that randomizes the IDs during the data acquisition process to mislead the attacker, and DDAF can detect, mitigate and localize different cyber attacks, and this is scalable and effective framework implemented on IEEE bus systems. And with sufficient deception, the framework can provide almost 100% immunity against the stealthy FD attacks. This work is partially supported by NSF. Thank you so much for your patience. If you have any question, please you can email us. We have the email address here and also in the introductory slide.